This is HOA debrief. I followed the edits until they led back to her. You are about to get another email, Betty screamed, waving a single sheet of paper so close to my face I could smell the toner. I stepped back on my own driveway, hands up, trying to keep my voice level. The wind was whipping loose papers around the Golden Mesa Community Association entrance sign behind her, and I could see my landscaping contractor pretending not to watch from his truck parked 2 houses down. Betty Baker, treasurer of our HOA in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, had shown up unannounced with a manila folder bulging with papers and a look that said she had been rehearsing this confrontation all morning. The paper in her hand was a signature page, she said, and mine was missing. I am trying to refinance my house, and any lien threat could wreck the deal before the management office even closes today. I had one shot to deliver my dispute packet in person, and Betty was standing between me and my car like she owned the street. Show me the page, I said. Betty pulled the sheet back and tucked it into her folder, snapping the binder clip shut. Your signature is not on it, so you never agreed to the updated parking rules, which means you are in violation right now. I felt my stomach drop. I had signed every single proxy form and policy update that came through my mailbox for the past 2 years. I work as a mortgage loan officer, so I understand exactly what a lien does to a file. I am not careless with paperwork. But Betty was already pivoting, her red cardigan flapping in the wind, and she was pulling out her phone like she was about to make a call. The landscaping contractor finally cut his engine and leaned out his window, watching. Betty did not care. She put on her thin reading glasses for dramatic effect and started scrolling through her phone. I am calling the tow company, she said. Your car is parked in a guest spot, and guests are not allowed overnight anymore. That rule went into effect last month. Betty, I parked in my own driveway last night. Betty did not even look up. The guest spot, she repeated, her voice rising. You used it for overflow 2 weeks ago, and that triggered a compliance review. Now every vehicle you own is flagged. I glanced at my contractor, who was now filming on his phone. Betty saw him and smiled. Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth, she said, snapping the folder shut again. That line hit me like cold water. Minutes are the truth. I had heard that phrase before, months ago during a budget dispute at a board meeting. A neighbor had questioned a vendor invoice that made no sense, and Betty had shut him down with those exact words. The neighbor moved out 2 months later. I did not connect it at the time, but now, standing on my own property with a tow truck supposedly on the way, I started to wonder if Betty had been running this play before. I need to see that signature page, I said again. Betty shook her head and turned toward the street. You will get a copy in the violation notice, which will be mailed within 5 business days. But the fine is effective immediately. I felt the time pressure like a weight on my chest. The management office closes at 4, and it was already past 2. If I did not get my dispute packet delivered in person today, Betty would have another excuse to stall. I walked past her toward my car, and she stepped into my path, waving her clipboard like a badge. Stop, she said. You are not dismissed. I am still conducting an inspection. An inspection. Betty had no authority to inspect anything without advance notice, but she was acting like she had a badge and a warrant. The contractor finally spoke up. Ma'am, he is on his own property. Betty whirled on him. And you are a vendor who is not on the approved list, so you can leave now or I will report you to the management company. The contractor looked at me, shrugged, and got back in his truck. I did not blame him. Betty had just weaponized a vendor list I did not even know existed. I took a breath and pulled out my phone. I started recording. Betty noticed immediately and raised her voice. You think this is petty, I think this is my purpose, she said. Her face flushed. That is twice now she had said something that sounded rehearsed. I kept my voice calm. I need to see the document you are referencing, or I am leaving to file my dispute. Betty stepped closer, and I could see the landscaping contractor filming again from his truck. She pointed at my car. If you leave, that is an admission of guilt, and the fine doubles. I did not respond. I just started walking. Betty followed me to the driver door, shouting that I was creating a hostile environment and that she was going to document everything. I got in, locked the door, and backed out while she stood in the street waving her folder. I drove straight to the management office on the south side of Pittsburgh, my hands shaking on the wheel. The office is in a strip mall next to a tax prep place, and the parking lot was nearly empty. I grabbed my dispute packet from the passenger seat, a thick envelope with every receipt, email, and meeting notice I had saved for the past year, and headed inside. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, barely looked up. "Can I help you? I need to file a dispute with the Golden Mesa Community Association. I am a homeowner, and the board is trying to fine me for a violation I never committed." She sighed and held out her hand. "I will add it to the queue." "No," I said. "I need to deliver this in person and get a receipt." She looked at me like I had asked her to solve a calculus problem. "We do not do receipts for disputes. Just leave it, and someone will get back to you." I felt the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I was told I had until close of business today to dispute a fine, and I need proof of delivery." She stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out a logbook and wrote my name and the time. "There," she said. "That is your proof." I took a photo of the page and left. I sat in my car and called the management company main line. A recorded voice told me to leave a message. I left 3. No one called back. By the time I got home, there was a new notice taped to my front door. It was printed on Golden Mesa Community Association letterhead with no readable text, and it said I had failed to respond to a compliance review and that a hearing was scheduled for the following week. The notice was dated 2 days earlier, which was impossible because I had been home all week and no one had left anything on my door until today. I took a photo of the notice and checked the envelope it came in. No postmark. Hand delivered. I started to wonder if Betty had printed this today and backdated it just to create a paper trail. That night, I went through every email and letter I had received from the HOA in the past 2 years. I found the vendor invoice that had triggered the budget dispute months ago. It was for a landscaping service, but the line items made no sense. Mulch replacement, $8,000. Tree trimming, $12,000. The neighborhood does not even have that many trees. I remembered the neighbor who had questioned it at the meeting. He had asked for receipts, and Betty had shut him down, saying the invoices were confidential and that questioning the board created a hostile environment. He moved out 2 months later. I pulled up the meeting minutes from that night, which are supposed to be public record. The minutes said the budget was approved unanimously with no discussion. That was a lie. I had been at that meeting, and I had watched the neighbor argue with Betty for 10 minutes. I did not mention my evidence yet, because I wanted Betty to repeat the story first. I needed her to commit to a version of events before I showed my hand. The next morning, I got an email from the management company. It said my dispute packet had been received, but it was missing required documentation and had been rejected. The email listed 3 new requirements that had never been mentioned before: a notarized affidavit, a copy of my deed, and a signed waiver acknowledging that filing a dispute did not stop the fine from accruing interest. I read the email twice, feeling my blood pressure spike. This was the moving goalpost. I had delivered exactly what they asked for, and now they were inventing new rules to stall me. I called a friend who used to work for a property management company in Pittsburgh. She listened to the whole story and then laughed. "That is a classic stall tactic," she said. "They are hoping you will give up or miss a deadline so they can slap a lien on your property. You need to document everything and get a lawyer involved." I did not have lawyer money, but I had something better. I had a phone recording from 6 months ago when a management company rep had admitted to me that the board sometimes told them to stonewall certain homeowners. I had recorded the call because I was already suspicious of Betty, and I wanted proof in case things escalated. The rep had been venting about the job and did not realize I was taking notes. She said Betty had a list of homeowners she considered troublemakers, and that the management company was told to lose their paperwork or delay their requests. If you are enjoying this HOA drama, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of petty revenge and justice served. I sent the recording to my lawyer friend and asked if it was enough. She said it was gold, but I needed to use it strategically. Do not just hand it over, she said. Wait until they are on the record at a hearing or a meeting, and then play it so it gets documented in the official minutes. That way they cannot bury it. I started planning my next move, but Betty was already 3 steps ahead. 2 days before the hearing, I got a call from my vendor, the landscaping contractor who had been at my house. He sounded nervous. "Hey man, I just got an email from someone claiming to be the HOA board president, and they said I am not allowed to work in your neighborhood anymore. They said I violated some vendor approval policy." I asked him to forward me the email. When I saw it, my stomach turned. The email was from Betty, but she had signed it as the board president. Our actual board president is a retired engineer named Tom, who barely shows up to meetings. Betty had impersonated him and used the HOA email address to intimidate my vendor. I forwarded the email to Tom immediately. He called me within an hour, furious. "I never sent that," he said. "Betty has been using the board email without permission for months. I have been trying to get the management company to lock her out, but they keep saying it is a board decision and we do not have a quorum." I asked Tom if he would testify at the hearing. He hesitated. "I do not want to get dragged into this," he said. "Betty is vindictive, and she will come after me next." I understood, but I needed allies. I asked if he would at least confirm that the email was fake. He agreed, reluctantly. The day before the hearing, I went back to the management office to submit my notarized affidavit and the other documents they had demanded. The same receptionist was there, and she looked annoyed the second she saw me. "You again," she said. I handed her the envelope. "This is everything you asked for." She took it without looking at it and tossed it into a bin behind the counter. "I will make sure someone sees it," she said. I asked for a receipt. She rolled her eyes and scribbled something on a sticky note, then handed it to me. I took a photo of it and left. On my way out, I noticed a file cart in the hallway with Golden Mesa Community Association labels on the folders. I glanced at the receptionist, who was on her phone, and quickly snapped a photo of the cart. One of the folders had a label that said "Compliance Review" with no readable text, and it was stuffed with papers. I could not see the details, but I could see that the stack was held together with a big binder clip, just like the one Betty had used. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the email Betty had sent to my vendor, and the fake signature page she had waved in my face, and the backdated notice that had appeared on my door. I started searching online for other complaints about the Golden Mesa Community Association, and I found a neighborhood forum where people had been venting for years. One post from 2 years ago caught my eye. It was from a former resident who said they had been fined for a violation they never committed, and when they tried to fight it, the management company lost their dispute packet twice. The resident said they eventually just paid the fine and moved out because it was not worth the stress. Another post from a year ago said the same thing. Lost paperwork, backdated notices, and a board treasurer who acted like she owned the neighborhood. I took screenshots of everything and added them to my evidence folder. The hearing was scheduled for 6 in the evening at the community center near the neighborhood entrance. I arrived early with my folder, my laptop, and a portable speaker in case I needed to play the phone recording. The room was set up like a courtroom with a long table at the front for the board and rows of folding chairs for residents. Betty was already there, sitting at the board table with her manila folder and a stack of proxy forms clipped together with a big binder clip. She saw me and smiled. "Glad you could make it," she said. "This should not take long." Tom, the board president, arrived a few minutes later and sat down at the far end of the table, looking uncomfortable. Betty ignored him and started shuffling papers. A few other residents trickled in, mostly people who lived on my street and had heard about the dispute. My former management company contact, the one who had warned me about Betty, texted me that she could not make it but that she was rooting for me. I felt alone, but I had my evidence. Betty called the hearing to order at exactly 6 and announced that we were here to discuss my refusal to comply with updated parking rules. I raised my hand. I never refused to comply, I said. I was never notified of any updated rules. Betty opened her folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is the signature page from the policy update, she said. Your signature is missing, which means you did not agree to the new rules, which means you are in violation. I stood up. Can I see that page? Betty hesitated, then handed it to Tom, who passed it down to me. I looked at it closely. The page had a list of signatures, but mine was not on it. I recognized most of the other names, but something was wrong. The signatures were all in the same handwriting. I held the page up to the light and saw that the ink was fresh, not 6 months old like Betty claimed. I handed the page back to Tom. This document is a forgery, I said. Those signatures are all written by the same person, and the ink is recent. Betty laughed. That is ridiculous, she said. You are making things up because you do not want to pay the fine. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder with the email Betty had sent to my vendor. I also have this, I said. An email you sent pretending to be the board president, trying to intimidate my contractor. Tom sat up straight. What email? I turned the laptop around so he could see it. Betty went pale. That is not, she started, but Tom cut her off. That is my name on the email, but I never sent it. Betty, did you send this? Betty looked around the room, her face flushed. I was acting on behalf of the board, she said. We have a vendor approval policy. Tom shook his head. We do not have a vendor approval policy, and even if we did, you do not have the authority to send emails using my name. That is fraud. The room went silent. I could see a few residents pulling out their phones to record. Betty tried to recover. This is a distraction, she said. We are here to discuss his violation, not some email. I reached into my bag and pulled out the portable speaker. I also have a phone recording, I said, from 6 months ago, where a management company rep admitted that you have been telling them to stonewall certain homeowners. I would like to enter this into the record. Betty stood up, knocking her chair back. You are not allowed to record conversations without consent, she said. Actually, I said, Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, which means I can record any conversation I am part of. And this recording is about to become part of the official meeting minutes. I pressed play. The recording was tinny but clear. The management company rep was talking about Betty and her list of troublemakers, and how the office had been instructed to lose paperwork or delay requests. When the recording ended, the room was silent. Tom looked at Betty. Is this true? Betty did not answer. She just grabbed her folder and stood up. I am not going to sit here and be attacked, she said. This meeting is over. Tom raised his hand. No, it is not, he said. Sit down. Betty hesitated, then sat. Tom turned to me. Do you have any other evidence? I pulled out the screenshots from the neighborhood forum and the photo of the file cart at the management office. I also have proof that the management company has been losing dispute packets and that Betty has been backdating notices. Tom took the folder and flipped through it, his face getting darker. This is serious, he said. If even half of this is true, we need to involve the management company and possibly a lawyer. Betty tried one last time. Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth, she said, her voice shaking. I smiled. Actually, I said, I have one more thing. I pulled out my phone and opened the video app. Remember when you showed up at my house and said my signature was missing from that page? Betty went still. I recorded the whole thing, I said. And in the video, you clearly have the page in your hand, which means you have been withholding it. I also recorded you trying to block my car at the community entrance 2 weeks ago, which is on camera at the gate. Betty stood up again, this time knocking over her water glass. The water spilled across the table, soaking her manila folder. Papers started to slide out, and I could see that several of them were duplicates with the same binder clip. Tom grabbed a few of the wet pages and held them up. "These are all the same template," he said. "Betty, did you print these today?" Betty did not answer. She just grabbed her purse and walked out. The door slammed behind her, and the room erupted in whispers. Tom called for order and announced that the hearing was suspended pending an investigation. He also said that all fines related to my case were being waived, and that the board would be reviewing every dispute Betty had been involved in for the past 2 years. I sat down, feeling the adrenaline drain out of me. A few residents came over to shake my hand and thank me. One woman said Betty had tried to fine her for a garden gnome last year, and she had just paid it because she did not want the hassle. Now she was going to file a complaint. The next week, I got a call from a lawyer representing the management company. He said they were conducting an internal review and that my dispute packet had been located. He also said they were terminating their contract with Betty as treasurer, effective immediately. I asked if that meant she was off the board. He said that was up to the homeowners, but that the board was recommending a special election. I thanked him and hung up, then called Tom. He confirmed that Betty had resigned from the board and that they were implementing new rules to prevent this from happening again. The board adopted an evidence-first rule, which meant that no fines could be issued without clear documentation and a chance for the homeowner to respond. They also suspended all towing authorizations until the vendor approval process was fixed. Betty tried to fight back. She sent an email to the entire neighborhood claiming that I had fabricated evidence and that the board was retaliating against her. But her own clip, the video I had taken of her at my house, proved the opposite of her claim. The video showed her waving the signature page and refusing to let me see it, and it also showed her threatening to call the tow company for a violation that did not exist. A few residents forwarded the email to the management company, and the lawyer called me again. He said Betty had violated the board code of conduct and that they were recommending she be permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in the future. I said that sounded fair. 2 weeks later, the board held a special meeting to vote on the new rules. The room was packed, and I sat in the back with my evidence folder just in case. Tom opened the meeting by apologizing to the neighborhood for what had happened and promising that the board would be more transparent going forward. He then called for a vote on the evidence-first rule and the towing suspension. Both passed unanimously. After the vote, Tom asked if anyone had any other business. A woman in the front row stood up. "I do," she said. "I want to make a motion that Betty Baker be required to apologize on the record in front of this room for her conduct." The room erupted in applause. Tom called for a vote, and it passed. Betty was not at the meeting, but Tom said he would send her a formal notice. The apology never happened. Betty moved out of the neighborhood a month later, and I heard through the grapevine that she had bought a condo in a building with no HOA. The neighborhood threw a block party to celebrate the new rules, and someone made a joke about naming a park bench after me. I declined, but I appreciated the gesture. My refinance went through without any issues, and I even got a lower rate than I expected. The contractor who had been intimidated by Betty called me to say he was back on the approved vendor list and that he wanted to give me a discount on my next landscaping job. I told him to keep his money and just keep doing good work. I still live in the neighborhood, and I still serve on the board as a volunteer. I never wanted to be involved in HOA politics, but after everything that happened, I felt like I owed it to the community to make sure no one else got railroaded the way I almost did. We have had a few disputes since then, but nothing like what Betty put me through. The new rules are working, and the neighborhood feels calmer. I even ran into the former resident who had posted on the forum about Betty 2 years ago. He said he wished he had fought back instead of just moving out, and I told him I understood. Sometimes you do not realize you are in a fight until it is too late. The most satisfying part was not the apology or the rule changes. It was the moment at the hearing when I played the phone recording and watched Betty realize she had been caught. She had spent months building a case against me, inventing violations and manipulating paperwork, and it all fell apart because I had done what she never expected. I had kept records, I had asked questions, and I had refused to give up. That is the thing about people like Betty. They count on you being too tired or too scared to fight back. But once you do, their whole system collapses. I still have the manila folder with all my evidence, and I keep it in a file cabinet in my office. I do not think I will ever need it again, but it is a reminder of what can happen when one person decides they are above the rules. The HOA is supposed to protect property values and maintain the community, but it can also be weaponized by people who care more about control than fairness. I am glad I fought back, and I am glad the neighborhood is better for it. I hope you enjoyed this HOA drama.